All right, shalom, brother and sister, brother KhazaqYah. And I wanted to do a video, long overdue video that I've never done before. There are a lot of videos circulating around where people are talking about why I'm not a Christian any longer and so forth and so on. I've never really specifically done a specific video on that topic, so I want to kind of address that. And I want to give you my viewpoints as to why I left Christianity, okay? When I was a kid, and I was playing for a living at different churches and stuff like that. And I went to a church one time and they was reading Exodus chapter 20, and where they said, they read the 10 commandments and they got to the part where it said, remember the Sabbath day. And they started reading, 6 days shall a man work and do all his labor, but the seventh day. And that's what stuck with me, because I knew from a kid that the first day was Sunday and the seventh day was what we call Saturday. And it bothered me. And everywhere I went, I would ask questions. I asked my dad, I would ask all the people that I knew that was in ministry. The Bible says to keep the seventh day. Why are we not keeping the seventh day? And the answer was given to me because the Lord rose on the first day, and we keep the first day in honor to the resurrection. But in my spirit, it never really agreed. So the more I began to read the Bible, the more I began to understand, the more I began to see that which I was taught in a Christian doctrine and so forth was going against what the Most High's word said. And everything the Most High said for us not to do, we was going around and we would teach and say, well, we're not under that law no more. We're under grace now, which lead me to my next discussion, which I've been putting off, and I want to do it prayerfully soon, where grace, we're going to show you grace in the law, or grace in the so-called Old Testament. So prayerfully, in a nutshell, the more we said, why did I leave the Christian church? The reason in a nutshell was because the more I aligned myself up with the Bible, the more I found out that the circle I was in, it wasn't fitting. Everything I would read and try to practice, it was being taught against it in the circle that I was involved in. And for a while, it was a struggle for me to break completely away from the church because of the passion and love that I had for the people and for the church that I was involved with. But the more I began to look to see what was required of me from the scriptures, what the Most High was requiring, and what the people were saying that we're not obligated to do, it just kind of drew me apart further and further. And then when I separated, at first I was so bitter and angry with the church that I was every lesson I did was specifically to uproot the Christian church. And I know some people like that today. You know, when they come into the knowledge new and fresh, they're mad at the false church. And they're ready to just rake it up and just tear it, pull up the strongholds. And we still do it. But my focus and goal is not on tearing up the church and pulling up the roots and exposing the falsehood, as much as my purpose and intent now is to expose the truth and let you deal with the truth. If you say you are a follower of the word of life or of the Bible and of the Messiah and all of that, and you don't do what the Messiah did, that's your challenge. I'm not challenging your religious affiliation, your religious belief and system. I'm challenging your belief in the word of the Most High. And prayerfully, as we talk, and those that are not afraid to have conversations with me, don't be afraid to have a spiritual or a biblical conversation with me. My intent is not to attack you, but to educate you just like I was educated, right? So I can understand those brothers and sisters that are bitter because their eyes have been freshly opened, and every video they put up on YouTube and everywhere else they put it up at, it comes out as a slashing and a dicing him in the heart. Understand that all of us have come through that way at some point in time where we were so frustrated with the lies that we just felt like we had to tell the whole world. So that's why you see that I don't do as many videos as I used to do, because I feel like that those that the Most High want me to reach and are going to hear a video that I do will hear. I don't have to put up 100 videos a day. I've done enough videos out there. I recall people would call me on the phone and challenge me and call me a liar and say I was in the cult and things of that nature. But now some of them same people have gotten the revelation, and now they're teaching. They have YouTube channels and so forth, and they have started congregations and communities. It was something about that terminology Christian that bothered me from my years of being in the so-called Christian church. I understood that Christianity to me was something different than what I had been taught that meant. And we were made to believe that to be a Christian meant that you are a follower of Christ and so forth. So if you're not a follower of Christ, then that means you're not a Christian. So for me, that wasn't a definition of what Christianity meant to me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the actual definition of Christian. And the more that I read the definition and the meaning of what Christianity is, the more I can see why I never really considered myself a Christian. So therefore, I've never really left the Christian church. Okay. Even though I was affiliated with the quote unquote Christian church. Okay. So somebody would say, well, brother, you kind of contradict yourself. If you was involved in Christianity, you were a Christian. Okay. Let me just say this here. That's not true. There are people that are involved in the Christian church per se, but are not Christians in the sense of the word. And once I get finished with this presentation, you will understand why I say that and why there are many people that call themselves or use the label of Christians, but they really are not Christians, right? They are just followers of what they know of who the Messiah is on the basis of the level of understanding that they receive from their religious upbringing. Okay. Now, having said that, I'm going to read out of the American Heritage Dictionary of the English language, and I'm going to show you what I have here. Okay. This is American Heritage 4th edition. Okay. And under the title Christian, it says a Christian is a professing belief in Jesus as Christ, or following the religion based on the life and teachings of Jesus. Okay, so now that in itself right there explains right there. I never was one to follow a religion. And then we're going to deal with that. So maybe I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, because this is not designed to be a lengthy discussion, but just something to just kind of put it out there so people can know my viewpoints and my thoughts with regards to Christianity. Okay. Then it says Middle English Christian, from Old English Christine, and from Latin Christianos, and from Christus Christ. Then it says see Christ. Okay. So now, if we go to Christ, because it's telling us now to see Christ. So let's go to Christ, and we're going to get a definition there. Okay, so under Christ, it says the Messiah, as foretold by the prophets of the Hebrew scriptures. So underline it, of the Hebrew scriptures. Okay, it says Christos, from Christos, anointed, a verb of Cretin, to anoint. It says CGHREI in Appendix 1. So just so you can see, I'm not just reading and making up anything. You see, I have appendix 1 right here. Let me see if I can bring it in close. See, where does it say appendix 1? Right here, guide to appendix 1. Okay, see that? Now, I want you to go to GHREI. It says, meaning to grime, from Middle English grime, from a source akin to Middle Dutch grimme. Okay, it's from Germanic grim or smear. Extended from, it says GHRIS, gris or chrism, or it says Christ or Christian or Christian or Christ mass or cream, right? Or Kris Kringle, from Greek Cretin, to anoint. Okay, so now that's all in the etymology of the word Christ, or where we get word Christian from, which it says is interesting. It says here, it says cream, right? And Kris Kringle. Okay, now who is Kris Kringle? Okay, do we need to go there and read who Kris Kringle is? I think I will, just for the sake of it, because somebody don't understand. So they're referring the word Christ or Christian to Kris Kringle. So let's go to Kris Kringle. Kris Kringle, it says Kris Kringle, and it says Santa Claus. Santa Claus. Okay. An alteration of German dialect Christkindl. Okay. Christkindl, Christmas present, the Christ child. German Christ, Christ from Middle High German, Chris from Old High German, Chris from Latin Christus, then it says see Christ, German dialectical kindle, diminutive of German kind, child from Middle High German, Kent, right? From Old High German kind, then it says CGENE. They gave you references to Old English and German and stuff like that. But Christ is actually a Greek or Latin word, which got its roots with another word, which is spelt with a C-R. So we're going to go there to the word Cretin, C-R-E-T-I-N. Okay. All right. Hold on to your hat, because what I'm about to read is going to make you mad. You're going to want to cuss me out when I read this. But let the truth stand. Don't be offended and take it personally, because this is not intended to be offensive, but this is intended to educate. We want to be educated. And a lot of times when we get educated of a truth, we in denial and we become offended. We feel like somebody's attacking you because they're telling you the truth, right? So let's look at this word Cretin, C-R-E-T-I-N. It says a person affected with cretinism. Okay, that says a whole lot, right? A person affected with cretinism, a slang, it says, the meaning too says a slang, an idiot, right? It says French Cretin, from French dialect, a deformed or mentally retarded person found in certain alpine valleys, from vulgar Latin Christinus, Christian, human being, poor fellow, from Latin Christinus or Christian. Then it says see Christian or Christianoid. So it's referring that same word to the root word Christian. I think it was utilized as a derogatory to the believers because of what they were doing. Okay. So we go to Acts 11:26 is where first time we see that terminology used. It says in Acts 11:26, and when they had found him, he brought him into Antioch, and it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the believers, or it says church in the King James language. We're going to deal with that in a minute. And taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians, right? First in Antioch. Okay. So now that word Christian is 5537 in the Greek text, which says 5537 in the Greek text, 5546, which is Christanos. See that? Same word Christanos that we just read. So the believers were first called Christanos in Antioch, or what they were basically saying was these people were called idiots and fools. It wasn't something that they called themselves. It says they were first called Christians in Antioch. Okay. That's the label that the people put on them, right? It's just like the label that people put on the so-called African Americans when we first came into this country of America, and they call us niggers, right? And now in today's time, people have taken that terminology and have flipped it and have changed the spelling of it, and now use the terminology nigga, and as if it's a term of endearment. Okay, so no matter how much we talk about that to people that call themselves niggers or niggas and say, well, there's no difference between a nigga and a nigger, but they're cool with it, and they'll never accept the reality that that is not a term of endearment. It's actually a term of insult, right? Just like the word Christian is not a term of endearment, it's a term of insult, that the people started calling them idiots or Christians in Antioch. Okay. Now the next place we see that word Christian is in Acts 26 and 28. It says, then Agrippa said unto Shaul, almost thou persuade me to be a Christian. Okay. Now, who was Agrippa, right? Was he an Israelite, King Agrippa, or was he a Gentile? Okay. So these are Gentiles who were calling Israelites idiots. Agrippa calls him an idiot. Okay. Now, the last time we see this word used is in 1 Peter 4 and 16. Okay. And it says, this is Shimon Kefa speaking. Okay. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glory in Yah on this behalf. Now, here's the thing, what I'm going to throw at you, right? Shimon Kefa didn't speak Greek. So he would have never used the word Christian. See? So that term Christian would have been a term of derogatory, and he would have never referred to himself as a Christian, right? Because he knew it was a derogatory terminology. Plus, he didn't speak in Latin, so we know he didn't say that. So what we know that Shimon Kefa, who the world calls Peter, said was, if we suffer as a follower of the Messiah. A follower of the Messiah in the Hebrew, the word for Messiah is the word Mashak. Okay, is where we get the word HaMashiach, right? The Messiah. So they would have called themselves Mashiachs, or followers of the Mashiach, or people use the terminology messianic. I don't particularly care for that particular phrase, but if you want to Englishize the word, it would be called a messianic. They were messianic followers, is what Shimon Kefa would have said. He wouldn't have never said Christianos because he didn't speak Latin. Okay. Now there are those that will argue with me and say, well, brother, you know, the Bible, the New Testament was written in Greek. Okay. That's not true. I know for a fact, and I actually have copies of Aramaic New Testaments, and I know that even during the days of the Messiah, he spoke in Aramaic. The people that lived in the land spoke in Aramaic. Majority of them, if not all of them, besides Shaul, didn't speak Greek. They weren't Greek-speaking people. Okay. As a matter of fact, and I don't want to go off into a whole nother subject, but when he was speaking Greek to the Greek soldiers, they looked at him like, "You can speak Greek?" So it was a thing. Whereas it was known that Israelites or Hebrews didn't speak Greek. So Shimon Kefa would have never used the word Christian. Okay, so that word Christian came over in the Latin and Greek, which was a derogatory terminology that they used for the people who were followers of the Messiah Yahshua. Okay. Now, having said that, which leads me to this point. I was never a Christian, but now I did leave the church, okay, which was or is called a Christian church, okay. Now, when you ask the question, okay, why did I leave the Christian church? That's a real good question. Never thought about it like that. But I put it to you this way. Back in 1990, right, just before my dad died, it was about the same weekend, as a matter of fact, the same weekend that my dad died. I was riding in my car. I was a musician playing for Church of God in Christ. And I heard a voice. And I'm not going to go off into whether it was the messenger Gabrielle or it could have been. I'm not going to put that out there like that. But I do know I heard a voice speak within me. And the voice told me that I was an Israelite. The voice told me I was an Israelite and to study the people, Israel, and to study the city, Jerusalem. And the voice took me to Daniel 9, okay? I went to Daniel 9, where he talked about 70 weeks, right? Is determined upon the city, right? I'm gonna take it right to where it was Daniel 9 and 24, where it says 70 weeks are determined upon the people and the holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in the everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Okay, so now that's what the voice gave me, right? To go and study the people and the city and understand the time, understand the prophecy, because I was really always excited and interested in end time prophecy, with what we learned in the Christian church doctrine called the doctrine of eschatology, or things to come, right? So that was always something that I was interested in. Now, before I heard the voice speak to me, I remember I was working for the Philadelphia School District. And in the school district, you got people, all different kind of religions coming together, just having biblical discussions. And this is how many Israelites come into enlightenment, by just studying. Okay, I was very zealous. I was a Pentecostal Christian man, for lack of a better way to express it. And I was a street minister on the street corner preaching salvation to people on the basis of my understanding of the New Testament scriptures, right? So I was very zealous, and I was on the street corners, and I was very, very bold. And I'm still bold, but I was bold to the point where I was out on the street corner with big, loud bullhorn blowing people's ears out, and I would go in front of crack houses and all kinds of things like that, preaching, right? That's how it was, right? And two of my experiences that I look back and I'm like saying to myself, when I look back, I say, wow, really, that was a seed planted, but I didn't never really know, and it never really took root in me until I look back and I said, oh, now I can see now. Okay. But anyway, we would have discussions, excuse me, we would have Bible discussions in our break room, talking about the Bible. And we was debating many times with different people from, it was Muslims, it was Christians, it was Jehovah's Witnesses, it was Baptists, Reformed, Presbyterians, Protestant, Reformed Protestants, all different kind of people with different kind of belief systems sitting around the table talking. And so I knew that New Testament inside out. I mean, I could break it down, and anybody that came to attack my belief, well, I knew the teachings of Paul inside out, upside down, right? So they couldn't do nothing with the boy with that, because I was on point. I knew them letters of Paul. I knew what I believed the New Testament was teaching, right? So there was a older gentleman there, and he he was kind of very old fashioned. You know, he was very plain looking brother. Looked like he could have been a prophet. I mean, he wore them country style overalls from top to bottom. And his name just happened to be Elijah, right? And so he would always come to around the table when people were talking, and he would never say that. He would just sit there at the table while we all battling back and forth with the Baptists against the Pentecostal, with the Catholics versus the Presbyterian and the Protestants. We was all battling back and forth, right? Methodists, all of us were battling back and forth. We even had some Mormons in the mix, and the Nation of Islam and the Orthodox Islamic people. We're always sitting at the table, just discussing. But the brother named Elijah, and I want to say his name was, I think it was Elijah Evans or something like that. I don't know if the brother's still living today or not, but he was older than me then. And so I'm pretty sure if he's still living, he's got to be up in age, because I'm 53. So he's probably in his 70s. So anyway, he asked me a question. Who are the true children of Israel? And I said to him, the Jews. And he said, I want you to read something. So he flipped over to Deuteronomy chapter 28. And I'm going to give you the exact verse, because I remember when he had me to read this, it was kind of interesting, because I always read Deuteronomy 28, the first half of Deuteronomy 28. I never read the whole Deuteronomy 28 from the top to the bottom. I always read 1 through 15, talking about the blessings. So when he had me to read Deuteronomy 28, right, and I want to say, I'll tell you exactly which one it was. And it's verse 48. That's what it is, 48. He said, therefore, actually I read up above that and down to that. He said, he started at verse, he said, I want you to read from verse 45 down to this verse 48, which reads, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not to the voice of Yah, thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and statutes which he commanded thee. Okay. So he said, he had me to continue to read. So I continue to read. And it said, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. And in verse 47 I read, because thou servest not Yah, thy Elohim, with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Right? And then he said, now read this verse here. And I read this verse. Therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, which Yah shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Right? And now, so he stopped there. So he said, I want you to meditate on that. Next time I see him, I ask you the question again. So I saw him maybe a day or two later. And he came, he said, who are the children of Israel? And I said, well, it sounded like us from what I've read. He said, now let's go back to Deuteronomy 28. He said, I want you to start at verse 49, the next verse, and read down. He said, and it read, Yah shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, and a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Verse 50, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Right? And then I read, he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high fence and walls come down, wherein he trusted throughout all the land. He shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all the lands which Yah, thy Elohim, have given thee. Right? So he said, I want you to read one more verse. Okay, I read all of that. Now this is all going into my head. I'm reading, I'm like saying to myself, our history is right there in that little passage right there. I don't have to read anymore. So he said, I want you to go down, and we're going to read all the way down to the end. He had me to read from 63 down to 68. This was like 1990, so almost 30 years ago. He said, okay, read this here. It shall come to pass that as Yah rejoice over you to do good and to multiply you, so Yah will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught, and you shall be plucked. This is the part that really put the nail in the coffin, if you will, for me. He said, and so Yah will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught, and you shall be plucked from off the land where thou goest to possess it. And I thought, the first thing that hit my mind when I read that, I thought about, at that time, I didn't know anything about the trans-Saharan slave trade. But this passage is actually dual, because actually it's dual. No, let me take it back. It's trifold, because this happened in 2 Kings. The first time this happened in 2 Kings chapter 17, when the nation of Israel, the 11 tribes, was taken into Babylonian captivity. That's the first phase, right? The second phase was when it happened in the time when the children of Israel, during the time of the Roman conquest, when the Romans came in and they besieged Jerusalem. That was the second fall of that. Israel was taken into Africa and scattered. Okay. Then the third time that this took place was from from Babylon to the Saharan, or what they call from Babylon to Timbuktu, and then from the interior of Africa, or the west coast of Africa, into the transatlantic slave trade, which is the third part of that took place, where he says, verse 65 of Deuteronomy 28, among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shalt thy sole of thy foot have rest, but Yah shall give thee a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. Right? Verse 66, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. Right? That is what explains what we experience right here in the good old United States of America. We live in fear. We see the blue lights behind us. We don't know what's going to happen. We're terrified, right? Okay, 67. Then he said, in the morning thou would say, I would to Elohim it was evening, and at evening you would say, I would to Elohim it was morning, meaning that you always feel like that there's a better time than it is right now. For fear of thy heart, wherewith thou shalt fear, and for sight of thy eyes, which thou shalt see. And 68 said, and Yah shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spoke unto thee, and thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondwomen, bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Okay. So now the you was added, you was in italicized. So we'll read no man shall buy. Right. Now, and that word buy is the Hebrew word kana, which means to erect. And so when you erect something, you build it up. Okay. No man will be able to build you up. So what comes out of that is an inequality is what happens. So it said that you will be sold as bondmen. The word bondmen is servant. The word abed, which means it says a servant, right? That's the word 5647 56:47. Okay, give me a second here. Which it says to work. It says to work by implication, to serve, to till, to enslave. So now this brother didn't break that down like that. He just had me to read it, and he asked me at the end of, after reading that, he asked me one last time. He said, "Who are the true children of Israel?" And I said, "We are." After reading that, I didn't have to go anywhere else. And as time progressed and I began to know how to read and to rightly divide the word, I was able to see other places I can go through the book from cover to cover and show you the prophecies that we fit, that proves that we are the children of Israel. And so I started incorporating my knowledge, because after I came into that particular knowledge, right, what I did was I got a Strong's Concordance, went to the Christian bookstore, bought a Strong's Concordance, Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, and I didn't know how to use it. And so what happened was, by me being a musician, I was traveling, going around doing gospel music workshops with Dr. Matty Boss Clark, and also some local musicians, one being the late Key Parham. And so I started studying praise and worship, and then I came in contact with, I don't know, by some kind of way, somewhere by association, it was a big epidemic where praise and worship started getting into the so-called black churches. And they started a teaching going around talking about the 7 words of praise: Hallel, Shabbat, Barak, Tehillah, Zamar, things of that nature. And so I was fascinated. I was like, wow, this is interesting. And so I had, like I said, the Key Study Hebrew Bible, which I have today. I don't have it right in my hand to present it. But the Key Study Bible, which had the numbers after the words. And so the numbers referred back to the concordance that I had, because I had a concordance in the Bible and I had a concordance by itself, but I didn't know how to use it. So I really nobody ever taught me. I just got it because I was always interested in learning about the Bible. So this one particular day, after I got exposed to this praise and worship symposium, I looked, and in the Bible, I would see keywords like, for example, the word praise. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. In the Strong's Concordance, if you look up the word praise, to the right side of that word in my concordance is a number that tells you what the word was in the original tongue, because the Bible was written not in English, but the Bible was written in we learned in theological seminary when I went that the Bible was written in Hebrew and Greek, Aramaic, and Chaldean, which they call it Chaldean, okay? So that's what I learned. So when I looked at the number praise and I saw 3034 next to praise, and it gave me reference to a word called yada, and I looked in the concordance and I saw yada, and I was like, wow, I had this all this time. I must have had this Bible for at least a year or two before I realized how to use it and before I realized what I had. So the Key Study Bible only had key words. So now I was able to pull out my concordance and see all the words, not just keywords that Key Study Bible just decided to pick out, but I was able to see all the words. I was able to take any word that I saw in the Bible that had a reference number to it and go into the concordance and find out what the word was in the original language. And from there, my study got more and more broad. And then the revelation that I had gained that we were the children of Israel, the more I began to read the words in Hebrew for praise, talking about things like Zamar and Teruah and Makula and the Shabbat did I say Teruah? And the Taka means to clap your hands, and the Rakad means to stomp your feet and all of that. And I was like, oh, wow. I said, that's what we do in the black church. And I said, the Spirit comes upon us, right? And it anoints us to go back to our culture. And we would do things like that. And then I began to look at the fact that we would say stuff like Messiah, Haka Messiah. The lady used to say that, an older lady used to say it in the church. Or my dad would say, Yeshaya. And he would be in the Spirit would hit him, but he would say, Yeshaya. You know, and we know now, after knowing the language, that what Yeshaya means, the Messiah, right? Yashayah, right? And just different little things that we would say. So I began to teach our people when I was in the Church of God in Christ that we are the children of Israel, the physical seed of Israel. And people thought I was taking it and meaning that we are the spiritual seed. And I said, no, we are the actual literal seed of Israel. We are the descendants of Israel that came into the lands of captivity for breaking of the commandments. And that was the beginning of when I started teaching. And that was back in the 90s. That was back in 19, I want to say, I really started teaching about 1995 that we were the children of Israel. And then I moved to Chicago and came in contact with some other people that were teaching the same thing. I get calls every so often or messages on Facebook or on my YouTube channel by somebody that was once a subscriber to my old channel and say, brother, I used to attack you years ago, but now I'm teaching the truth. So I praise y'all for that. And I praise y'all for this opportunity to share with you a portion of my testimony. And prayerfully, if anybody has any other questions or comments or experiences that you want to share, we're in the process now of doing our own story so that people will know how we came into this knowledge of this truth. So having said that, that's all I'm going to share for this time. And until the next time, may the blessings of the Most High Yah be with you and your family. Shalom, shalom, shalom.